Now, if I can pull my head out of the sound of music, I was up there, the hills are alive. I was ready to go. Okay. So, where am I supposed to be? I'm supposed to be doing finishing up the basics of the Science of Mind series. And this is very dear to my heart because my first introduction to Science of Mind was around the January return to teaching the basics. That was in 1984. I've been doing this a long time. And a friend of mine invited me and said, if you're ever going to come and learn anything about Science of Mind, do it now. And I did, and it immersed me immediately. And it was the same titles. We take them from the first 4 chapters of the book. The thing itself, how it works, what it does, and how to use it. Now, what worked for me then, and really helped me just jump right in and grasp these ideas, was that the minister took some things that I think I know about, those kinds of things that we call real and physical, that we can see and we can measure, where we have all these codified principles and laws and rules, and come to realize how learning about them and the way they work in the microcosm helps me understand how the macrocosm, ultimate reality, works. So I'm going to sum up the 3 topics we've already done this month using that idea to build my foundation for how I want to talk about how to use these things. One of the first ones we become aware of is gravity, right? You're a little kid, and you got to learn to hold that big head up, and you stand up for the first time, and you learn a lot of lessons about gravity. Hopefully no bad ones, hopefully just those good standard ones. It doesn't turn on the first time we try to use it. It's been there all along. It doesn't work different or to different degrees for different people. It's always the same here on Earth. It does change if we change conditions of where we are in the universe, but it doesn't change here on Earth. Now, I personally don't know how it works. I am pretty familiar with what it does. I learned it by trial and error. I still occasionally make errors, and it has not changed how it works. I recall I was with some friends one day, and we went and we were placed at a booth, and I noticed when I walked in that the table was about this much longer than the booths. But I got to talking and enjoying, and it was time to leave, and I was probably still talking, and I started scooting out of the booth. And I forgot that I didn't need to go to the end of the table, so I took my last scoot, and gravity jumped right up and said, hello. It didn't respect my dignity or my lack of understanding or remembering that there wasn't a booth that went as long as the table. It was still there. Or take chemistry. What was that? Better things for living through better chemistry or something. I think that was DuPont used to talk about that. Again, we have the thing itself, chemistry. And before we knew there was a name for it, before we knew anything about it, before we realized anything about how it could be used, it was just there. It comes as part of the package for life on Earth. Now, I do have a vague memory of how it works. I remember there's a periodic table, and there's elements, and there's valences, and you can add and subtract and do some things with them. I didn't spend a lot of time with that. You tend to think of labs and test tubes with chemistry, but a kitchen, cooking, that's chemistry, right? We use it all the time. And it doesn't care what you're doing with it. It doesn't care if you're a terrorist making a bomb, a doctor administering a cure, a cook baking a cake. Chemistry does what it does with precision and perfectly, and it doesn't care a thing about how it's being used or what the outcome is. We have mathematics. There's another example. I use that one a lot. I'm an accountant. It's there whether you understand it or not. Works the same for everyone, and it's a great, all of these are examples, but it's a great example of abundance. Because I can use all the tools I want to use, and there's all the tools you can possibly use or anybody can use. It's unlimited because it's a principle. Electricity, thing itself. I don't understand a thing about the thing itself. It's been around forever. It was starting fires and giving little shocks to Neanderthal man before they ever had a clue what it was or how to use it, until we figured out the thing itself, Somebody started worrying, thinking about how it works, figuring out what it does. And all of these are describing something that points us to the macrocosm. And I have my little... So here in Science of Mind, and we have an example of it here in the center of this piece and also over here on the wall, we have, this is called our teaching symbol. And this is how we put into a visual form this macrocosm that we're talking about. And so, which one's easier for you? Up here? Okay. So there's the thing itself, the allness. Now, we can't draw an infinite. We can't draw an endless, and so we make this circle. But we know that it represents something that it contains all. And in that is that which is self-knowing and conscious, the thing itself. And though it isn't really separate, it works by using its own self. There was nothing but God to start, right? So it works through itself, using its own substance, and it produces the manifest universe, which includes electricity and mathematics and chemistry and gravity. Those are all microcosm manifestations of the thing itself. The thing itself, something you can't really get behind. You can't go back behind that any further. I don't know how to. It's there. And it creates form. It seems to have this desire. It does it with precision. It doesn't play favorites. Yeah, just like chemistry and gravity, no favorites. Works the same for everyone, every place. You can't turn it off and on. I couldn't turn gravity off when I slid past the booth. I couldn't turn gravity off now if I step off the front of that stage, and I can't turn off the way the universe works. It would be nice if I could. It would be nice if I could announce, these are the 5 minutes when my consciousness is high and I know that it's all mine and wonderful, and I'm going to do that for 5 minutes, and then I want you to shut down and not listen to all that other negative talk that I use all day, right? But that's not it. It works for everyone. It works for the doctor, the terrorist, the cook. It's not affected by the outcome. Doesn't care whether it's doing fire or light, bombs or pies, balanced checkbooks. Doesn't matter. The thing that changes then is not the thing itself, not how it works, not what it does, but how we use it. This is where the important thing happens. Now, I forgot to read the quote on the first page. Oh, well. So I do have 3 quotes, and I meant to read about electricity after I said electricity, because Holmes mentions this. It was in the universe when Moses led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. And that's true of all the natural laws. They have always existed, but only when understood may they be used. That's what we're about here, is using. So these other 2, and it's very interesting where they came from. I want to tell you each of these quotes. The first one comes from my favorite page in the entire textbook, page 422. It's less than a page long. Well, I'll show it to you. I have the textbook. It's only that long. It's called The Final Conclusion. And to me, it sums up what we're doing here, why we're doing this. And the first paragraph of it is the quote there: "I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered." It's more important to prove it, because until you prove it to yourself, it's just theory. Right? And the second one is the very first sentence of the chapter called How to Use It. So the placement of these is pretty important. One of the great difficulties in the new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. As a matter of fact, we only know as much as we can prove by actual demonstration. You know, who watches The Big Bang Theory? Yeah, good, any hands. Okay. So on The Big Bang Theory, just recently, Sheldon and Amy have come up with a theory, and they've got it all established, and they've put it out in the world. And a couple other scientists accidentally proved the theory. And they're getting put up for the Nobel Prize, which is not good news to Sheldon and Amy. Because Sheldon, of course, has been after a Nobel Prize all of his life. But they point out in this show that it is common that the people that win the prizes are the ones that apply the theories. Not the ones that came up with the theory, not the ones that draw it all out, but the ones that make application. So what happens when we learn how to? Well, let's look at some of those previous principles. Like I said, most of us, we just cooperate with gravity. That's our status. And that's a good, wise first step to learn how to cooperate with gravity. Don't get off balance. Don't drop the baby. But we can also apply some other principles, and before long, we find out we can leave gravity's pull altogether. We can exit Earth's gravity and go anywhere in the universe, because we now understand gravity and how it works and what it takes to go beyond it. Some other people put other applications together and came up with flight, coming up with a way to agree with gravity and work within its constraints, but also move more freely around more quickly. Some other people applied other things, and they learned how to do tall structures. We have all these skyscrapers because we've learned how gravity is doing its thing and what we need to do to have, the same way that we did with our bodies, learning to stand up, how one becomes vertical and maintains that against the pull of gravity. I use math, cooks, nurses, merchants, but think about it, we've got astrophysicists. They've gone much deeper. And they've played with math in a far different way. And they're predicting, unseen yet, where stars and planets and black holes and anomalies in the universe are, some of these huge things. So they're using this math because they have played with the principles and gone back into the theory and then used it, put it to use. There's physicists looking into the smallest possible things. They're predicting smaller and smaller particles that we are yet unable to actually see and measure. We used to call science only what we could see and measure, and these people are going well past that. If you go to Home Depot, you see a bunch of how-to books. A cookbook is a chemical how-to book. We've got a whole network, HGTV. It's all about how-to. In almost all those cases, they don't delve very deeply into theory, right? They just tell you what to do. The problem that we have here in spiritual work is that a lot of us kind of resist that how-to part. We like the theory better. Like those other things I've mentioned, a basic understanding does take us a certain distance, but it is those that have been willing to go deeper that have made it possible for us to go deeper. There are people that lead the way. I flip on my light switch and I get light because others went deeper into electricity, right? I can fly because others went deeper into flight and how that works. So fortunately, those that have gone deeper are giving us some guidance. They've given us some tools. And I like to think of it as, so the first thing you do about something if you want to get mastery is you learn. You learn about it. But what we've got to do is move from learning to embodying. We've got to really get it. And when we get it embodied, then we can move into acting from it. I'm going to give you an example of that before this is over. So when we go to Home Depot and we decide we want to build a deck, we buy a book, How to Build a Deck. But before that's even going to work for us, we have to have some basic skills, right? We have to be able to hammer and saw and measure. We might have to have a little bit more information about angles and joining or something. And that'll do us if all we need in life is that one deck. If that's the only thing we're going to build, we can build that deck. And that's kind of the way it is here. We can learn some very basic skills and we can get a certain thing done in our life. But now a master carpenter goes beyond that. So if we want to be masters, we have to go beyond that. Where do we start? How would we get the basic skills? Well, we have principles and laws here in our spiritual world. And they're just as dependable and precise as those laws we talked about for math and chemistry and gravity and all, right? But we have laws. We have the law of attraction, the law of mental equivalence, the law of reciprocity. And they teach us things like attraction's one that's out there in the world. We attract to ourselves what we believe, the atmosphere of who we are and what we're expecting from the world. We attract that to ourselves. In order to attract that, we must have a mental equivalent. If I want something new to come into my life, I need to have a mental equivalent of that. And if I look out there and it's in my life, I have a reciprocal idea in my own mind. Our life is a wonderful mirror. You want to know how you're currently using these laws? Look at your life. It tells you. What's out there is in here. Sometimes we don't like that information. It's bad news, but it's okay because it can be changed. We have control of that. The big step is to learn to look and to acknowledge. Skills. We have a lot of skills. One of the main skills we teach is called spiritual mind treatment. We do prayer work. That's our form of prayer. And I've asked Manny, he shared something with us in our healing prayer team meeting where prayer has worked in his life, and I would like him to take a moment to share that. Can you?
Thanks, Reverend Cindy. Last April, my sister was diagnosed with cancer at the base of her tongue, a place that's very difficult to operate. And so she went to some doctors in Greenville, then in Charleston. She didn't have any faith in them. She had to go to the best cancer specialist for the throat and the tongue up in Boston, Massachusetts. So in June and July, she went up there, had 31 treatments of radiation and about 4 treatments of chemo. She couldn't do the 5th chemo because it was too toxic. So moving forward around December, they did another PET scan and CAT scan. And they said, well, it really didn't shrink the tumor that much, so it really didn't work. So you're going to have to come back and go up to Boston. She lives in Greenville, South Carolina, and it's time to see the surgeon. And that's the last place you want to have cut on because they take the bottom part of your tongue out or whatever, and it really deforms you and messes up your life for the rest of it. So anyhow, I was beside myself because I'm into food healing and getting at the cause and curing things and not treating something that actually causes cancer. So anyhow, there's nothing left to do except pray. So I sent a prayer, one that my sister would understand, and sent it to her, sent it to all the practitioners, and I felt that I couldn't do this myself. I was too personally involved. I didn't have the faith that it would flow, and you know when it clicks, there's a feeling. So I sent out to the healing practitioner team, several ministers in town, a few other people, to Unity Worldwide, lots of the ministers in town. So she just had another PET scan up in Boston, and she reserved the surgical suite for 2 days later because she didn't want to come back to Greenville and go all the way back to Boston. So they do the PET scan and the CAT scan. It's all gone. They also found a lump on her, a dot on her lung and her liver. It's all gone. The surgeon had a complete frigging meltdown because he couldn't see this, cognitive dissonance. So he said, well, you got to come back in 6 weeks. We'll do it again. We'll find it. It's there somewhere. And so I'm just so grateful that everybody's prayers work. And a lot of my friends, my sister's friends all said, oh, thank you, the prayer was beautiful. And they followed the directions and did it. And so we have a healing practitioners team here, and all the ministers are practitioners as well. Every Sunday you have the opportunity to have a session with us free, complimentary. So use this, because every time we give a healing, it's truly one we needed as well.
Thanks, Manny. This stuff works, right? And we used a tool. We used a skill that we've developed over time called spiritual mind treatment, a specialized kind of prayer. We've got a lot to do. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. We'll talk about how to get that in a class, right? We do meditation. One of our primary teachings is meditation. A time to get away from all that outer chatter, a time to turn away from outer appearances and get back into your center and your truth. We teach a practice called visioning. That's a skill. Yeah, so these are our hammers and screwdrivers and saws. These are our skill sets. We have others. We have ways to learn those laws and skills. We teach classes. We do this. We have books. We have the magazine. It's all through there. The how to get those basic skills, to learn them. But to build mastery, just like the carpenter, if the master carpenter, now he may have fancier tools, he may have more tools, but he's still got the basic tools, right? Now he may have a pneumatic nailer, but he's still got a hammer, and that's just another way to do it. He may have 20 different kinds of saws, but he's still exercising the basic concept of sawing. The difference is not the tools, the difference is the amount of practice. The difference is the amount of experience with it. And you got to remember that all that experience includes some failures, some challenges that were mostly but not completely met, some times when it was almost right and you noticed what you could have done to make it even better. Manny talked about, we call people in this organization that have had a certain level of training and have passed tests and been licensed by our home office to do counseling work, capital P practitioners. But if you read the textbook, he talks about everybody as a practitioner. When we do this work, we're practicing doing this work. And the longer and the more we practice, the more mastery we get and the more we embody. The more meditation we do, the more we embody that quiet connection to the one, right? I'll give you a story of then how you move from embodying to acting from. Once it's embodied, you start acting from that place. You don't get confused. You don't go to negativity. Today, let's go back to on Wednesday, the ministers were having a meeting, and we were talking about the fact that we have this annual meeting this afternoon. And we had not asked anybody to do any cooking or food fixing. And we decided rather than ask someone who already does a lot for us, we'll just order some sandwiches and stuff. So I called on Friday, and I talked to the College Park Publix, and I ordered the tray of sandwiches, and Paul had his list to go up there this morning and get the other stuff. And he dropped me off because I still needed to print some things. And I walked in the door, and there were Gary and Martha and Roque fixing a meal. And I'm like, I didn't act from there for a minute. I'm like, now what am I going to do? I got not enough food. I said, Gary, who asked you to do this? And he said, God did. I'm like, well, maybe I should go with that. Maybe we just need more food. But you know what? I get a text a few minutes later from Paul. He says, they didn't fill the order. So God told the College Park Deli not to fill the order. And Paul was about to, get it done. I'm going to be late. And I said, just tell him, never mind. So on Wednesday, 3 ministers put into the universe, we need food for today. And we have food. And it's not a light lunch. It says light lunch provided on there. Gary's involved. It's not light. Okay. Yeah. But this is the way it works. When you're just living in it, you just put it out there. You don't even know you put it out there. Early in my career in science of mind, I had wanted a new stereo. I got a new stereo. That's what I got. This back when they came in cabinets and they had big speakers. And I had a townhouse, and that thing cranked right up. And I thought, I need a bigger place. I need a house for my stereo. I was taking a class, I think a Catherine Ponder class, and I put that in there. I need a house for my stereo, and it should have these qualities. And then I forgot about it, and about 6 months later, I realized, I bought a house. It just sort of happened. I didn't really make a plan. I just sort of went to visit a friend. I liked hers. I looked at another one. I bought a house. I was moving the stereo in. I thought, aha. Right? When you're living in it, it just starts unfolding. So how you use this, you learn it. You talk to others about it. You grapple with that symbol until it means something to you, right? You use it before you fully understand it. You use it before you think you've got all the perfect words for it. I just told you, this is 35 years for me. How long for you?
1970.
She got me, right? You use it before you feel like you can get out and it flows out like it does for some of us that have been doing this for years. You use it on yourself. You use it on your friends. You use it when your back is to the wall, but you use it when you just want it a little better or a little nicer or something else, right? It runs the whole gamut. Cancer is a back against the wall situation. Don't wait till then. Get your practice on while it's simple and easy and you're just doing little things. So that when the back is to the wall, you are ready, or maybe you just don't go to the wall anymore because you're living it, you're living from it. That's the how-to. So the real trick, the ultimate thing we're after here is not really how to use it, but now you use it. Personally, now I use it. Now I use it. And once we're doing that, we are applying the theory and making the difference in our lives. Let's read that affirmation one more time because it kind of worked in there. I move easily and freely from theory to application, from understanding to embodiment, from talking about to acting from. I am convinced that there is one power in the universe and I can use it. And so it is. Thank you.